Hey everyone, welcome to Babbling Zoom, where the narrative matters. I'm back, and the main goal here is to now focus on the Wonder Woman. Before we talked about Superman, and now that I've been watching been kind of caught up with the Superman, the My Adventures with Superman, and it's surprisingly good. And some fans of like a lot of fans of Superman who like everything to be true to the comic books may be upset. I'm kind of talking to you, being Fuso. I do watch you. You're awesome. But the changes are fresh and I like it. In a way, it's like the writers kind of went into my brain, took my ideas, and just threw it out there. So I love what's going on. I love everything about it. I'm going to continue watching it. I love it. That's it. Let's talk about Wonder Woman. Batman's easy. Superman's easy. Wonder Woman is complicated for some awkward reason. So here's the thing about Wonder Woman. We know most of her we know her backstory. It is a very simple backstory. In the middle of the war of man, Steve Trevor, I was going to say Rogers by mistake. Trevor crash lands on Themyscira, interacts with the Amazons, piquing Wonder Woman's interest in the situation. She's never seen a man. She's lived on an island full of women, closed off the rest of the world. And in meeting him, she learns about the greater world, the struggle of man, and wants to join into the war. This is the story of Wonder Woman. From there, she joins Steve and goes into the war to fight. Now, I had a chance a few days ago to stumble on the comic book, the original comic book, at the library. Didn't rent it. I was in a different area. So I didn't have the card for that particular library. I'll probably rent it later. And yeah, because the comic came out around, I think it was like 41, we are talking about a situation where a war is going on. When America does join the war, she's right there. She's capable of joining in. What's funny is one of the first people she fights is Dr. Poison. Very interesting in the beginning. It was really cool. But in reading, reading it, I realized something very interesting about Wonder Woman compared to her two counterparts. Batman and Superman are very established, both with their superhero identity and their secret identity. We know this verbatim. We've memorized this. It's just part of the social zeitgeist. I think I'm saying that right. Now, Wonder Woman is an interesting problem because in her early forms of her comic book, she was associated with the war. Surprisingly, much like Steve Rogers, Captain America. Both characters were introduced in a war. They fought through it. They had many adventures. And then something changed. Steve Rogers, Captain America, his main thing was he fought through the war. That was his identity. To accelerate him to modern day, we froze him, unfroze him, and now he's a fish out of water. That's his story. Wonder Woman's story throughout the war, World War II, was being a nurse to a secretary of Steve Trevor. Her life is attached to Steve Trevor in the whole story, right? Where eventually she meets all these other people. A modern retelling of it always just kind of glosses over where Wonder Woman has been for all these years. So I want to dive into two aspects of Wonder Woman through her villains and kind of recontextualizing her history. So let's start with Wonder Woman herself. The thing about Wonder Woman that always bugs me, and again, within this situation, within this scope of a first responder, Wonder Woman is a person who has been at war. When you really look at the trinity of DC, that man is a billionaire who fights bad guys on the street. That's what he knows. I mean, yes, he's been around the world, but his been around the world is interacting with local culture, and that's it. He's never joined a war. Superman is a country boy. He's about values. He's never truly joined the war. He's never truly joined. Conflict was never his thing. Wonder Woman, on the other hand, her introduction, her island is about conflict. Warrior women. When she joins the war, she joins as a warrior. When she fights as a warrior. Newer depictions of her even has given her a shield and a sword. She is a warrior. But every single time we approach the concept of Wonder Woman, she is the most lighthearted person ever. I forgot about a YouTuber who showed something very special. How for that one show, they showed Wonder Woman a little bit more aggressive. And I think in doing so, it opened up an idea of Wonder Woman to me and just who Wonder Woman is. As opposed to exploring feminism because she's a woman, why can't we just explore war? Namely, PTSD. This is something that Wonder Woman can actually really portray in a DC world, right? She's strong, she's confident, but she's seen a lot. Unlike Steve Rogers, Captain America, where his entire life ended when he got frozen and he woke up in a time of peace, it's implied that Wonder Woman has always just been there throughout the time, ageless. Let's start exploring this. To explore this concept, I want to break Wonder Woman down into two eras. Wonder Woman living in the modern era, and Wonder Woman through flashbacks living through various wars. We're not just sticking with one war. We're going to span all of it. We are now dealing with a situation where we can live in the present or reflect on the past. Right? Time of peace and all the conflict she's witnessed. Wonder Woman seems very fine, but there are moments where in this idea of the story, this idea of retelling of Wonder Woman, she's rattled. She's seen a lot. She was prepared to fight. She is a warrior, but she probably was never really prepared for the effects after. And here's the thing, I've never been a soldier. So in this situation, we need a writer who can understand that and help. First thing we have to talk about is setting up Wonder Woman in the time. And surprisingly, this is where I'm going to go slightly deviate. So let's switch over to the site. In the original comic book, one of the things that Wonder Woman ends up doing is she comes to America. She comes to DC, Washington, D.C. So this is going to be her home base. And she runs into two people. One is Etta Candy. Etta Candy. Oh, okay. Let me rephrase. Let me start over. The first person she actually meets up with The first person she actually meets up with is a woman called Diana Prince. Both Diana, one woman, and Diana Prince have the same first name. In the original comic, Diana had a situation where she um, wanted to leave the country to meet up with a boyfriend. Yeah, that thing, to get married. And she was working as an army nurse. This is where one woman, realizing they both look the same, kind of had a situation, said to themselves, hey, what if we just switch places? Well, not switch places. I'll pretend to be you. I know a thing about nursing, and then you could head off out of the country, and I'll just pretend to be you. So the original Diana Prince started with this. After meeting Diana Prince, later in the comic book, she goes off to Holiday College, where she meets Etta Candy and actually the crew of Beta Lambda sorority. What I want to do with this, a great retelling of Wonder Woman, would be to keep Diana and Etta. These are her friends. Much like um, Batman has Alfred and Robin, much like Clark Kent has Gibby and Lois Lane. One woman needs a grounded friendship, right? She shouldn't be alone. In this grounded friendship between these three women, what we have is someone to fall back on when Diana has problems reliving the past, right? We are focusing on the fact that there are times when Diana has trauma. So how does this whole thing start? She shows up in America, and in a sense, she lives through all of this. Eventually, probably setting up different names, different organizations, whatever. She becomes the unknown benefactor to a college, creating Holiday College for women. And in doing so, she essentially sets up her own, not Themyscira, but a familiarity back to women, a space with women in it. In the modern time, she meets Diana Prince, someone who surprisingly is similar to her, studying in, I don't know, studying the field of science or nurse, or she's a nurse or something. She is also probably working for the military, because we are constantly going back to this military aspect. Um, Possibly a nurse or possibly a secretary or something. She's in this college for the studies, but some really messed up disease. I think my wife said polio or something like that. I don't know. Is crippling her. She's unable to physically be in places that she wants to be, and she knows that in the end she'll probably lose her job. One woman comes up with a proposal, also outing herself out. I will take your place. It would help me to be part of the system to help fix the system. If I could get in to the government, maybe it'll help me out. Etta is Diana's best friend, and they all know who Wonder Woman really is. So in this situation, whenever Wonder Woman is out doing things or needs help, both researching something, Diana can help with the research, Etta can help on the streets if she need be, or as moral support. Let Etta be a psychiatrist or something. So whenever Wonder Woman breaks down, she has these two friends to fall back on. This whole thing is Wonder Woman's support group. She's able to talk to these two people. Now that we do establish how Wonder Woman's going to be, personality is going to be, and the people she will use as friends, we now break the concept that is Wonder Woman being strictly only in modern time and split her down the middle. A lot of the stories can be broken into two things: either flashbacks, which is the war, or modern time. One of the most interesting ideas I thought of, Ares is one of the top villains in Wonder Woman's arc. And what I want to do from here is change Ares from a man who's obsessed with fighting, physically fighting, to change him into something different. How do we explore this? We're going to show two sides of Ares. As much as we're going to show two sides of Diana from the past and the present, we're also going to show the two sides of Ares, the past and the present. What we're going to do. My idea is to take Ares and to split his personalities in two different times. He's still going after Diana by then. The Ares of the past is the same old Ares that we've known. He starts situations. He sometimes joins those situations. He is a full physical force to Diana. In the present, he's a person who's seen Diana change. He's seen the fights. It's kind of the old foe for centuries. Whenever Ares battles Diana, it's more of a conversation. It's a mental game. The Ares of the modern day will find Diana probably sitting there. They'll have a situation where they'll sit down at a cafe, talk, drink, and all he's trying to do is drum up memories, trigger parts in her life, traumatize her by having her remember the past. These whole situations can be a mental game that Ares has now learned to play with. Gone is the day of the physical. Now is the day of the mental. This is the present day. War is different. It's mind games now. It's the war of politicians, the war of misinformation. That's the war that he's now doing. And it reflects on how he interacts with Diana. Now his whole goal in the modern day is to trigger her PTSD. Have her lose it. Have her push. And her whole goal now is to interact with this, depending on which version of her and her of Diana you want to go with, a foe or a family member. Is she a god? Who knows? So this is where Ares is. Ares floats between two worlds. Ares is a god, but occasionally he will pop up in the past. That's his story. What doesn't help is his children. Well, not children in the past. They're aggressive. They're as aggressive as him. So any character under Ares will mostly be the aggressor trying to relive the old days, while Ares himself is more of a, sorry about that. My kids are stupid. By the way, remember that time back then? But Ares is the main person who is more of a psych game. He psychologically messes with her, kind of voices in her head type of nonsense. Everyone else can be more physical if you want to. I mean, even Medusa can be the concept of why are you so beautiful? The anger of women. Right? Well, Circe is too. The gods themselves are more about the present, or they're fluid. No, they're present. Let them be present. Let Ares be the only one who goes back in past. and talks about the past. When we go to the past, on the other hand, what we're going to do is spread out a lot of these villains. We already talked about Dr. Poison being one of the main characters. We have 3 versions of Dr. Poison, which could be interesting to play with. The idea of family lineage. Generations of Dr. Poison can pop up. So we're talking 3 generations of Dr. Poison is a good idea. One for World War One, one for World War Two, depending if you want to go back to World War One. Optional. Kind of more like Cold War, which is thinking about all this other stuff. When it comes to the war aspect of it, one woman's going to jump around from multiple different aspects of war. After World War Two, where the whole thing was about World War II's whole thing is just about fighting, constantly fighting. It's an ongoing war. All she's doing is joining in as a soldier. When we get to the Cold War, in the Cold War, we're talking about mitigating damage, mitigating any escalation, de-escalating any threat. And this is her going over to the Soviet Union, maybe stopping something that's happening in America, anything. All the government wants to do is mitigate all this damage. They don't want to even start a war. And the majority of her flashbacks in the Cold War is just running around doing that. Because we're in modern time, like we're talking now, I probably spelled golf wrong, but we could even talk about, it's you. Yes, Gulf War. We could even introduce the Gulf War. I think it's okay to start doing that now. Right? Where now we see her change. She's not only stopping conflict, she's protecting the innocent on both ends, both sides, right? So this is kind of the idea of like, what is it one woman, what is her past like? We get to see snippets of how she grew as a soldier, how she saw things, how things have shaped, how different wars have shaped her. And yes, there are other wars you could throw in there. These don't even have to be Elseworld stories. These are just her past. We can explore so much about Wonder Woman just in flashbacks. But now we're just introducing all the villains from who knows when. Dr. Poison could go through multiple generations throughout all these things. You have characters like Shang Tzu, which I found, which they changed from a totally different name, which is very offensive. We could throw in Dr. Cyber, Veronica Kill, Baron Blitz, Krieg. The Nazi Party had their own specific characters. There it is. The Baroness. That's what I was looking for. Olive and Gunther. Yeah, there's so many villains you could look into just on the war aspect, right? And a lot of these characters don't have to just stay in World War II. Because the majority of your one woman stories are going to be in the present, we can't just hover around gods. We can't just hover around the past and the war. We have to consider modern day. Being a person who, in this story, working with the government, I know in the modern version, she is working for the Department of the Metahuman Affairs. In the movie, she's just working at a museum far away. I mean, still in DC, but this time working for a museum. I believe the idea of working with the military feels better and in line with the concept of her trying to stop all of this. A lot of the villains, I mean, we could even just take Veronica here and just put her here. I mean, that's where in the video. That's where it's said on the website. But your other characters, kind of terroristic or other incorporate, like as the one say, the villain incorporated, whatever. These are villains like you could put Doctor Psycho in here, the woman hating man. Maxwell Lord is in here. Now, are all these going to be terrorists? I think that's the real question. No, I mean we could just explore politics, the problems with politics, or just the rich. Because again, we're dealing with DC, Washington D.C. at this time, so you're seeing more than just heroes and villains or the military. There are organizations here in this situation. This is where the law is. This is where everything is, right? Oh yes, we could also even throw in some forms of science in here. So it's not just terrorists, others, organizations. You could throw in Giganta here. This is a weird guy I found, Blue Snowman. He's not on the main thing, but it's really interesting. Now, last thing we're focusing on is magic. Because she's part of the metahuman affairs, maybe it's more broader than that. Maybe it's more supernatural affairs or something like that. We could broaden it out more like an X-Files situation, right? And in the X-Files situation, this is where we could take the idea that the movies had with her being an archaeologist, which I love that idea. Um, I love the idea of what they did with Cheetah in particular. It's not just about the fact that she's just a person who's trying to be, a rival, but a like-minded rival, right? I like the idea in the movie that they're both in the same field, but seeing world differently. I didn't read that far into the book. So when it comes to Cheetah, we have a situation where you have to choose one of them, right? And to be honest, yeah, we'd go with Barbara, right? The idea of the archaeologist. Yeah, this allows us to explore more about other gods through this aspect. What artifacts or what deals with gods did people make? I'm actually gonna put Blue Snowball in here. Sorry, Blue Snowman. Oh wait, no, that's science. I had a science moment. I had a science section. Silver Swan. There's a Crimson Centipede, which who knows what that is about. Syra. I put Cheetah in there. Yeah. So these characters are more of the explorations of other gods, right? As opposed to like just the only god. Only Greek gods. So the Egyptian ones. White magic sounds like a good one too. Sorry, white magician, right? But the important part of this whole thing is kind of exploring Wonder Woman more as a soldier, less than rather than always pushing the whole feminist idea. Yes, play the feminist card. That's great, but it's not the only thing she is. If we are looking at Wonder Woman as a first responder, she is a soldier. Let's explore the trials and tribulations of a soldier. Person who's optimistic all the time, but maybe not, right? So in all of this, I've omitted one big person in this whole story. Where is Steve Trevor? Because the main thing about Wonder Woman is this is the character that she helped and followed into man's world. Well, because now we are exploring the past through her and seeing all the things that she has done in the past, we now leave Trevor there as well. Now the whole story of Steve Trevor is we watch a man she loves or is affectionate with or whatever you want to do with that slowly pass away. We see grief. If you've seen Highlander, you know what I'm talking about. Through each iteration of the war, We see the aging of Steve Trevor. We see how they learn to be together, how Trevor basically knows her anyway, how maybe Steve helped her set up a fund with his help or with whatever they can do. Steve helped make her the unknown benefactor. And eventually, Steve passes away. Who knows when? Maybe somewhere around the Cold War, maybe after that. But Steve grows old, and he's happy because he got to spend time with her. This is how we use Steve Trevor to show all the identities that Diana has created. With Steve Trevor gone now, she is the mysterious benefactor. She's good until the events that'll allow her to meet Diana Prince and Etta Candy. This is her friendship now. This is her present. Steve was the past, and now she has her friends. And yeah, if you want to introduce a new character, introduce a new character. If you want to introduce a new Steve Trevor, fine. But in this way, the Steve Trevor that you know from the stories stays with the origins of his story, as opposed to trying to make a new Steve Trevor. Allow him to pass away. He fought his war. He doesn't need a new one. Just introduce a new person. Create a new man. Or pull something from the past. Now, the last thing before I go. And this goes back to one character again. Etta Candy has had various interpretations of her. And the thing that bugs me is the fact that we've not allowed her to be a plus size model. I believe this is the new version of her. We've changed her race. That's fine. But why is she skinny? This is a time to introduce a character that is body positive. Let her and a disabled Diana Prince show that you can be a strong woman without having to have the perfect figure. Diana is the perfect woman, but broken. Diana Prince is a broken woman physically. But mentally, she's perfectly fine with her life. Yeah, there she is. Etta Candy should not hold to the ideals of the perfect woman. She should hold to the ideals of the average woman who is proud of who she is. Just leave out the fact that she eats a lot of candy all the time. Yeah, that didn't help old days. She was problematic. She was very problematic. But at least she was there. In the old comics, she was there to help and to fight. So that's what I'm going to say about Etta. And Diana. Diana shouldn't have to run off to meet a man. Let her be always there. Right? That's how I feel. This is my idea of Wonder Woman. A soldier stuck in time, constantly joining every single war and constantly reliving it. And when she does, she has her friends to fall back on. What do you think? See you.